The boardroom shimmered with glass and chrome, a cathedral of money where billion-dollar dreams were built or destroyed. At the head of the table, Victoria Sterling adjusted her diamond bracelet so the lights above caught it just right. She wasn't just a CEO, she was a queen in her castle, and today she wanted a spectacle. On the polished conference table sat the company's crown jewel, a revolutionary engine worth $2 million, the key to a $67 million deal with international investors. But there was one problem. It didn't work. 6 weeks of failures, 3 teams of elite engineers, and still no solution. The machine hummed like a coffin waiting to be nailed shut. Victoria's lips curled into a cruel smile as she spotted him. Jamal, the janitor, standing in the doorway, trash bags still in his hands. She waved a manicured hand toward him, as if summoning entertainment for her bored guests. "Look at this," she said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the heavy silence. "The MIT graduates can't fix my engine, but maybe our janitor can." The word dripped with poison, sending a ripple of nervous laughter through the executives. Jamal froze. 20 pairs of eyes locked on him like he was an insect under glass. He wasn't supposed to be here. His job was to clean up their coffee cups and take out their trash, not stand in the spotlight of their contempt. Victoria rose from her chair, the staccato click of her red heels echoing across marble floors. She walked straight up to him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, expensive, cold, and suffocating. Her eyes narrowed like a predator circling prey. "Here's the deal," she said, raising her voice so the entire boardroom could hear. "You fix this engine, the one that defeated some of the brightest minds in America, and I'll make you a senior engineer. Fail." She leaned in until her lips were almost at his ear. "And you're finished. Security will make sure you never set foot in this building again. Ever." The room gasped. It wasn't just a challenge, it was a trap. Jamal wasn't just risking his job, he was risking his future, his dignity, his reputation. Victoria straightened, snapping her fingers for emphasis. The sound cracked like a whip. 2 hours. That's all you get. Succeed, and you'll be a legend. Fail, and you'll be a joke. Phones were already out. Employees whispered, recording the scene, some smirking, others wide-eyed with disbelief. The air was electric with anticipation and cruelty. Most people in that room thought they already knew the ending. A janitor couldn't possibly succeed where Harvard and Stanford had failed. This was going to be corporate blood sport, and Victoria Sterling had just set the stage. But sometimes the underestimated write the endings no one expects. Here we shift gears, showing Jamal's backstory and sacrifices, giving the audience someone to root for. It keeps the drama alive but makes viewers emotionally invested before the real fight begins. Long before he stood in that boardroom, Jamal Washington had already fought battles most of those executives couldn't imagine. To them, he was invisible, the man with the mop, the one who emptied their trash while they argued over million-dollar deals. But every scuff mark he polished off their marble floors hid a truth. He wasn't just a janitor. He was an engineer in exile. 3 years earlier, Jamal had walked into Tech Vanguard's headquarters with hope in his chest and a framed community college engineering degree tucked under his arm. He'd dreamed of joining their team of innovators, building machines that would change the world. Instead, he was offered a technical consultant role that turned out to be nothing more than cleaning floors for minimum pay. The title was a joke. One more humiliation dressed up as opportunity. Why did he take it? Because life had cornered him. His mother's cancer treatments cost thousands every month. Insurance covered a fraction. Dreams didn't pay hospital bills, but scrubbing floors did. So Jamal swallowed his pride, pushed his mop cart through the halls of Silicon Valley's brightest company, and told himself survival came first. Still, he couldn't switch off the engineer in him. While others walked past the company's blueprints scattered on tables, he studied them during late-night shifts. While executives dismissed him as furniture, his mind dissected engines the way some people read novels. He heard problems others couldn't. He felt the rhythm of machines like music in his bones. That gift wasn't born in textbooks. It came from summers in Detroit, in a grease-stained garage with his grandfather Samuel. The old man had been one of the first black foremen at Ford, a legend who could coax life out of any engine. "Listen, boy," he'd say, guiding Jamal's hands over a sputtering motor. Engines have a heartbeat. If you learn their rhythm, they'll tell you what's wrong, Jamal learned. He listened. By 16, he could rebuild engines blindfolded. But while his classmates went on to big universities, he stayed behind, working double shifts to keep his mother alive. He sacrificed ambition for love, a choice the boardroom elite would never understand. Now, here he stood, trash bags still clutched in his calloused hands, while a woman in red heels wagered $67 million on his failure. They saw only a janitor, but Jamal carried his grandfather's voice in his head, a legacy of steel and grit. The humiliation cut deep, but beneath it burned something stronger, quiet defiance. He wasn't just cleaning floors. He'd been waiting, silently, for the one moment when the world would finally hear what he'd always known. Tech Vanguard's tower gleamed against the Silicon Valley skyline, but inside its glass walls, panic was spreading like a virus. For 6 weeks, the company's revolutionary engine, the crown jewel of their future, had sat lifeless. Every test ended in the same humiliation. Sparks, smoke, then silence. This wasn't just a machine. It was supposed to be the heart of their autonomous vehicle empire, the technology that would put Tech Vanguard ahead of Tesla, ahead of Detroit, ahead of the entire world. Investors from Munich to Tokyo had been promised results, and now, with days left before a critical demonstration, the company was staring at disaster. Victoria Sterling, the iron-fisted CEO, felt the pressure closing in. Every morning, she stalked the boardroom like a caged predator, her heels clattering against marble while her executives sat frozen in fear. Coffee cups piled up on the conference table as though caffeine could manufacture miracles. But miracles never came. 67 million, she snapped during one tense meeting, slamming her hand against the table so hard the engineers flinched. That's what we stand to lose if this engine doesn't run by Friday. Do you understand? 67 million. That's market dominance in 3 cities. Gone. The engineers, brilliant pedigrees from MIT, Stanford, and Harvard, sat in silent defeat. They had tried everything. Rewiring, reprogramming, rebuilding. And still the engine shut down every 14 minutes and 37 seconds with the same mocking error. Harmonic disruption detected. Their faces were pale, eyes ringed with sleepless exhaustion. They were out of answers. The investors weren't blind. Rumors had already begun swirling. Whispers of pulling out, shifting money elsewhere, cutting Tech Vanguard off at the knees. And behind closed doors, board members muttered what no one dared to say aloud. Victoria Sterling's empire might be about to collapse. That's why her challenge to Jamal wasn't just arrogance. It was desperation dressed as entertainment. She needed a distraction, something to shift the spotlight from her failure onto someone else's humiliation. And what better victim than the man no one respected? The janitor they all walked past without a glance. In that moment, Victoria thought she had control. She thought the outcome was certain. After all, if the smartest engineers in America couldn't solve the problem, how could a man with a mop possibly stand a chance? But arrogance is a dangerous blindfold. Because while her executives saw a joke, Jamal saw something different, a puzzle. And unlike them, he wasn't chained by pride, politics, or fear of looking foolish. He wasn't afraid to listen to the machine's voice. $67 million. Hundreds of jobs. The reputation of an empire. All of it hung on a machine that had mocked the brightest minds in Silicon Valley. And now, the man they had all dismissed as invisible was being thrown into the fight. The boardroom became an arena, the polished marble floor now a stage for corporate theater. Victoria Sterling thrived on it, the tension, the fear, the spectacle of power. Her red heels clicked against the floor as she circled Jamal like a queen, choosing how to execute her gesture. "Here's how this works," she announced, her voice booming over the company's sound system. "This machine has beaten the best. 6 weeks, millions of dollars. 67 MIT and Stanford graduates, all failures." She stopped, turning sharply toward Jamal, her eyes narrowing. "Now we give our janitor a chance." The word landed like a slap. Phones rose instantly, executives recording, assistants typing furiously. Social media managers perked up. This humiliation would be broadcast live. Within minutes, Tech Vanguard's Instagram feed lit up. "Here's your janitor challenge." 67 million mistake. Jamal stood frozen, his maintenance cart beside him, trash bags still in hand. Two security guards slid into position near the doors, arms crossed, silent reminders of what failure would mean. Victoria raised her hand, snapping her fingers for emphasis. 2 hours. That's all you get. If you succeed, I'll name you senior engineer, right here in front of everyone. She paused, letting the absurdity sink in. But when you fail, and you will fail, security will escort you out, permanently. Your name will be blacklisted in every company from here to Detroit. The executives gasped. This wasn't just a challenge. It was an execution dressed up as entertainment. The German investors, seated in the front row like judges, leaned forward. Their cold stares weren't on Victoria anymore. They were on the man holding trash bags, the man who hadn't yet spoken a word, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the legendary engineer brought in as an advisor. Uncapped her fountain pen and began taking notes, her eyes glinting with curiosity. Victoria spread her arms as if conducting a symphony. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show. Today, you'll see exactly what happens when people step above their station. A nervous laugh rippled through the room. Some employees grinned, eager for spectacle. Others looked away, shame burning in their eyes. But no one spoke. Jamal's chest rose and fell, slow and steady. He could feel every eye on him, could feel the weight of contempt pressing down. But behind the noise, the whispers, the cameras, he heard something else. The engine. Silent. Waiting. Victoria's voice cracked like a whip. Start the clock. A giant timer lit up on the projector screen. 2 hours. That was all he had to prove what an empire of engineers couldn't. The trap was set. The execution staged. To the crowd, the outcome seemed inevitable. But they didn't know Jamal, and they didn't know what happens when the underestimated finally get their shot. The engine sat in the center of the boardroom like a beast in chains, chrome and steel gleaming under the harsh lights. To the engineers, it was a puzzle that mocked them. To the investors, it was money slipping through their fingers. To Victoria Sterling, it was the weapon she would use to destroy him. But to Jamal, it was something else entirely. He stepped forward slowly, ignoring the weight of 200 eyes drilling into his back. For a moment, he just stood there, hands resting lightly on the machine's frame. He closed his eyes. Around him, whispers filled the room. Scoffs, laughs, disbelief. A janitor, touching a multi-million-dollar prototype like it was his to command. But Jamal wasn't listening to them. He was listening to the engine. His grandfather's voice came rushing back from the summers in Detroit. Engines have heartbeats, boy. Listen close, and they'll tell you when they're in pain. He pressed his palm against the metal. The machine wasn't just broken. It was restless. Like a choir forced to sing in the wrong key. Every component straining against the others, trying to find harmony but never quite making it. That's why it shut down, he realized. Not because it was weak, but because it was fighting itself. He opened his eyes and glanced at the timer on the wall. 1 hour, 56 minutes left. Around him, the engineers leaned back, smirking. One whispered, "He's petting it like a dog." Phones kept recording, eager to capture the moment of his failure. Jamal leaned closer, ear inches from the machine, as if it were whispering secrets only he could hear. And in a way, it was. The faint tremors beneath his fingertips reminded him of the old Mustang his grandfather revived decades ago. A car 3 mechanics had declared dead until Samuel Washington coaxed it back to life with nothing but patience and instinct. He smiled faintly. The rhythm was the same. An offbeat pulse, a stutter in the song. He didn't need fancy degrees to recognize it. This wasn't about lines of code or software updates. It was about harmony, about finding the balance between machine and mind. Behind him, Victoria folded her arms, her cruel smirk never leaving. "Tick-tock," she said loudly, her voice dripping with venom. "Every second brings you closer to the end." But Jamal didn't flinch. He pulled a chair, sat down calmly, and began scanning the scattered blueprints. His fingers traced the lines like a pianist running over sheet music. Every line told a story, every number a clue. The crowd saw a janitor fumbling through papers. But inside Jamal's mind, pieces of a puzzle were starting to fall into place. The machine was singing a broken song, and he was the only one who knew how to tune it. The seconds ticked down on the massive red timer, every beat echoing like a drum of doom. 1 hour, 39 minutes left. Executives shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some smirked, certain they were watching a slow-motion train wreck. Others leaned forward, uneasy, because there was something in Jamal's calmness that didn't fit the script. He bent over the machine, his calloused hands brushing the bolts, the wires, the pipes. To most, it looked random, like a janitor pretending to play engineer. But Jamal wasn't fumbling. He was listening. Every vibration against his fingertips was a note in a song only he could hear. Engines are like orchestras, his grandfather's voice whispered in his mind. When one instrument is out of tune, the whole song suffers. And then it hit him. His eyes widened and he let out the smallest laugh, sharp, almost disbelieving. It wasn't the engine's strength that was the problem. It wasn't the software or the design. It was the rhythm. The machine wasn't broken. It was being forced to sing in the wrong key. He grabbed the blueprints again, flipping through the pages with lightning speed. Numbers, measurements, diagrams, all cold, clinical ink. But to him, they weren't numbers. They were mismatched notes in a symphony. A song written in 2 different languages, never meant to fit together. He stood up suddenly, his voice cutting through the thick silence. It's not the machine. It's the way it's been told to move. The room fell still. Even Victoria paused, her smirk faltering for the briefest second. The engine isn't failing, Jamal continued, louder now. It's fighting itself, like a choir forced to sing out of tune, over and over, until it finally collapses. A ripple of murmurs spread through the audience. Engineers frowned, checking notes, rethinking months of failed attempts. Some shook their heads. Others stared at him with something they hadn't felt before, doubt in their own certainty. Victoria rolled her eyes dramatically, trying to reclaim the spotlight. "Poetry won't fix this machine," she snapped. "Talk is cheap. Show us something real." But the German investors weren't laughing. Klaus Müller, the stoic man in the front row, leaned forward, elbows on his knees. His sharp eyes studied Jamal with the curiosity of someone who'd just seen a crack of light in a locked vault. Jamal didn't look at Victoria. He didn't look at the timer. He pressed his palm flat against the steel once more, closed his eyes, and whispered under his breath, "I hear you." The boardroom was silent now. No snickers, no scoffs. Just the faint hum of a machine waiting for someone to finally understand it. And for the first time in weeks, the balance of power in that room shifted. The janitor wasn't just surviving the trap anymore. He was rewriting the script. The timer glared red on the wall. 56 minutes left. The tension in the room was suffocating, thick enough to choke on. Jamal wiped his hands on his uniform, took a slow breath, and reached for the tools laid out before him. To the executives, he still looked like a janitor playing make-believe. To Jamal, it was the moment his entire life had been leading toward. He twisted open a panel, eyes narrowing as he studied the components inside. Every bolt, every wire told a story. And to him, the story was clear. This machine didn't need a miracle. It needed someone to listen. The investors leaned forward in silence. Phones streamed live, comments racing faster than anyone could read. Most expected disaster. A few sensed history in the making. Victoria Sterling broke the silence with her sharp voice. "Don't drag this out, maintenance boy. Let's all watch you fail faster." Jamal ignored her. He adjusted a small piece, tightened another, his movements calm and deliberate. Then, with a steady hand, he placed a part that looked insignificant, a detail no one else had thought to try. He stepped back. "Start it." The room held its breath. An engineer hesitated, glancing at Victoria, who rolled her eyes and gestured impatiently. "Fine. Let's get this over with." A key turned. The engine roared awake, shaking the glass walls with its thunder. For a second, it sounded the same as before. Rough, uneven, strained. A few executives smirked. But then, something shifted. The stuttering noise smoothed into a deep, steady purr. The vibrations evened out like a heartbeat settling into perfect rhythm. For the first time in 6 weeks, the machine wasn't fighting itself. It was alive. The diagnostic screens lit up green across the board. Temperatures steady. Pressure balanced. No errors. 0 disruptions. The boardroom exploded with gasps. Engineers who had been silent for weeks leaned in, frantically comparing readings. This can't be right," one stammered. We tried everything. No, Jamal said quietly, his voice calm but firm. You tried to make it fit your world. I just let it be what it already was. The investors erupted in whispers, their voices sharp and urgent in German. Phones flew out recording data, snapping photos. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who hadn't looked impressed with anyone in decades, stood to her feet, her eyes blazing. This, she said, pointing at Jamal, is engineering. The crowd pressed against the glass walls, employees filming, cheering, shouting in disbelief. Some even clapped, unable to stop themselves, and at the head of the table Victoria Sterling's face drained of color. The smug grin was gone. Her eyes darted from the green diagnostic screens to the roaring engine, to the investors who no longer looked at her. They were looking at him, the janitor. The man she tried to destroy had just saved her company, but the real reckoning was still to come. The engine's steady purr filled the boardroom like a victory song. Every screen glowed green. Every warning light that had haunted the company for weeks was gone. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence was heavier than thunder. Then came the applause. At first scattered, uncertain, but quickly swelling until the glass walls trembled with the sound. Employees who had once looked past Jamal were now cheering his name. Phones streamed the moment live to thousands. Comments flooding in. Genius janitor? This is history in the making. Fire the CEO, promote the janitor. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, her eyes locked on Jamal. That, she said, voice cutting through the roar, was flawless. You didn't just fix the engine. You understood it. That's a gift no textbook can teach. She turned toward the investors. If this company has any sense, they'll recognize what's standing right in front of them. Klaus Miller rose from his chair, slow and deliberate, every eye following him. We came here ready to walk away, he said, his German accent sharp, precise. But what we witnessed just now? This is true innovation. Not arrogance. Not titles. Talent. He extended a hand to Jamal. Our partnership stands, and we will invest more than before, provided he leads the diagnostics team. The room gasped. More money than they had hoped for. And all of it tied to the man they'd called a janitor. Victoria Sterling's face twisted, caught between fury and fear. For weeks she had mocked him, scheduled his cleaning shifts to humiliate him, reduced his presence to a punchline. Now, in front of her employees and investors, her empire had been saved by the very man she tried to crush. The cameras caught every detail. Her clenched jaw, her trembling hands, the way she looked at Jamal like the ground beneath her had disappeared. Social media lit up with a single verdict. Karma. Jamal didn't gloat. He didn't need to. He simply wiped his hands on his uniform, nodded once, and said softly, I just did what I was trained to do. Listen, that was the moment the story ended for Victoria Sterling and began for Jamal. Washington, the janitor they tried to erase, had become the man who saved them all. And as the live stream replayed across millions of screens, one truth rang louder than the engine's roar. Never underestimate the underestimated. If this story made you believe in second chances, in hidden talent, and in justice served, then smash that subscribe button right now. Because on this channel, we uncover the stories they don't want you to hear. And who knows, your story might be the next one we tell. So subscribe, hit the bell, and join us, because the underestimated are just getting started.